Do you know Barron Trump? Of course you do. He's not just famous for being the youngest son of Donald Trump, one of the most influential presidents in modern history, but also for his striking appearance, his composure beyond his years, and his rare kindness. Despite coming from a powerful family, Barron Trump avoids the spotlight. Unlike many other children of the elite, he does not seek media attention or indulge in luxury. There is something different about him. An air of quiet contemplation, a depth that is difficult to explain. But have you ever considered that this boy might have a special mission, a role far greater than what the media portrays? I once doubted it too, until recently when our channel received a letter from a 15-year-old boy. He wasn't a prophet, just an ordinary teenager, carefree like any other. But his life changed forever on one fateful day. An accident occurred, he died for a few short minutes, and in that time he met Jesus Christ. And what Jesus revealed to him about Barron Trump was beyond belief. This is not just another near-death experience. It is a warning, a revelation about the path that humanity might take, and at the center of it all is Barron Trump. Listen carefully, because what you are about to hear may change the way you see the world. But before getting to know the 15-year-old boy and the message from Jesus Christ, I want to provide you with some very important information. Because there are things that not many people know, things that may make you question the mysteries surrounding the name Barron Trump. If I told you that this name had appeared in documents from over 100 years ago, would you believe me? In 1893, an American author named Ingersoll Lockwood published a novel titled Barron Trump's Marvelous Underground Journey. The book tells the story of a remarkably intelligent, aristocratic boy born into a wealthy family who has a mentor named Don and embarks on a mysterious journey through unknown worlds. It doesn't stop there. Just a few years later, Ingersoll Lockwood wrote another book titled The Last President. This novel tells the story of a controversial US president who lives in a building on Fifth Avenue, which, if you didn't know, is the exact location of Trump Tower today in New York. Two books, two stories that seemed like fiction, but contained striking coincidences with today's reality. A boy named Barron Trump, a mentor named Don, a controversial president. These were written in the 19th century, and yet, over 100 years later, we see Donald Trump and his son Barron Trump come to life in reality. Is this just a coincidence, or was it foretold? Could Barron Trump be more than just the son of a former president? Could he actually have a greater mission than we ever imagined? And if the things written in these books were not accidental, then perhaps what the 15-year-old boy is about to share, his near-death experience, his meeting with Jesus, and his warning about humanity's future, will make you pay even closer attention. Now, let's hear his testimony. Hello, listeners of Eternal Bible Stories. Today I want to share with you a story unlike any you have ever heard. This story did not just change my life. I believe it could change yours as well. I know that many people might doubt it, might think that this is just a product of imagination, but I am not here to convince you of anything. I am only here to tell you what happened to me, and the rest is for you to decide. My name is Daniel Carter. I am 15 years old, living in a small remote town near the edge of the Chihuahuan Desert, where the sun scorches the earth by day and the stars stretch endlessly across the sky by night. I had never really thought much about death or the afterlife before. I wasn't someone who went to church regularly, nor did I have much interest in the supernatural. To me, life was simple, just school, friends, and video game. But everything changed the day I died. 6 months ago, on a Friday afternoon, everything seemed normal. I left school as usual, pedaling home along the same familiar route. But that day, the sky felt strange. darker than usual, yet with no sign of an impending storm. A peculiar feeling crept over me, as if something was waiting for me ahead, but I brushed it off. All I wanted was to get home, turn on my game console, and forget the exhaustion of the long week. I reached the intersection, one I had crossed hundreds of times before. Everything seemed ordinary until a blaring car horn shattered the silence. I turned my head, and before I could even react, a massive truck came barreling toward me at terrifying speed. In that instant, time slowed. I felt the violent rush of wind against my face, the force lifting me off the ground. A second later, my body slammed onto the pavement. Somewhere in the distance, I heard a piercing scream, but the sound faded, growing softer, then distant. I was still aware when they rushed me to the hospital, still felt the machines surrounding me, the rhythmic beeping of the monitors. But then, the sounds grew faint, softening, slowing, until they disappeared entirely. My body felt heavier than ever before, as if the weight of existence was too much to bear. My little sister, Susan, clutched my hand tightly, her voice breaking as she whispered, "Please, big brother, don't give up." My father paced restlessly behind her, the faint scuff of his sneakers against the hospital floor the only sound left. My mother stood by the window, her hands pressed together in prayer, unable to face what was happening. I felt their love, their pain, their desperation, but I also felt something greater, a force pulling me, one I couldn't resist. I wanted to stay, but I was slipping into a deep, vast silence, a silence so immense it almost felt peaceful. The last thing I heard was my mother's trembling voice whispering, "Oh, my love," and then nothing. I opened my eyes, yet I was no longer in the hospital. The cold walls, the beeping machines, the frantic whispers of my family, all of it was gone. I had crossed over, stepping into a place beyond human words, beyond anything I had ever known. I didn't know where I was, but I knew one thing: this was where I belonged. There was no more pain, no more sickness, no sense of time or age. My body felt light, weightless, as if I were floating. Then it appeared, the light. At first it was just a flicker, a distant glow, soft and unassuming. But within moments it grew, expanding until it engulfed everything around me. Yet this was not ordinary light. It wasn't sunlight, nor the artificial glow of a lamp. It was alive. It pulsed with warmth, radiated love, and wrapped around me like an embrace from someone who had known me forever. The light was aware. It wasn't just something to be seen. It was something that knew me, understood me, loved me. It reached into the very core of my being, unraveling every hidden thought, every unspoken sorrow, every part of myself that I had buried deep inside. And yet I felt no shame, no fear, only peace. As I stood there, I realized I was no longer bound by the laws of the world I had left behind. There was no gravity, no weight, no time. The space around me was vast, yet comforting, stretching into infinity yet feeling like home. Music filled the air, not from any instrument, but from the very fabric of existence itself. It was as if the universe was singing. Then, in the midst of the glowing expanse, shapes began to form. Rolling hills bathed in golden light, rivers shimmering like liquid crystal, endless fields swaying in an unseen breeze. Everything was alive, breathing, singing. The grass wasn't just green, it hummed with a color more vibrant than anything I had ever seen. The rivers didn't just flow, they carried whispers of melodies unknown to the human ear. This place was not just a world, it was a song, a living, pulsing symphony of existence. For the first time in my life, I felt truly free. Every burden I had ever carried, every pain, every regret, all of it was gone. I was no longer just a boy from a small desert town. I was something more. And though I didn't know what lay ahead, one thing was clear. This was only the beginning. At first, all I could see was the overwhelming radiance, a light so pure and alive that it seemed to breathe with its own presence. It wasn't just brightness, it was something much deeper, something that reached beyond sight and into the core of my very being. This light wasn't just around me, it was within me, seeping into the very essence of my soul. And yet, despite its intensity, it did not burn. Instead, it filled me with an indescribable warmth, like the embrace of a long-lost parent, a presence so deeply familiar yet unfathomably divine. I felt stripped bare before it, as though every thought, every emotion, and every hidden part of me was exposed. But there was no fear, only peace, an all-encompassing sense of belonging that I had never known before. And then, as my vision adjusted, I saw him. Jesus stood before me, unlike any image I had ever seen in books or paintings. He was not the pale, delicate figure often depicted in churches, nor was he distant or ethereal. No, he was powerful, radiant, and more real than anything I had ever known. His presence commanded all existence, yet it was not one of intimidation, but of perfect authority and boundless love. He was wrapped in garments of light, but it was not just the light around him. It emanated from him, as if he himself was the source of all life. His very being seemed to pulse with an energy beyond human comprehension, and yet I was not afraid. Instead, I felt drawn to him, as if every fiber of my existence had been waiting for this moment, as if I had spent my whole life searching for something I had never known I needed. And then he looked at me. His eyes, they held everything. It was as if the entire universe, all wisdom, all knowledge, all understanding rested within them. But more than that, they saw me, truly saw me. They pierced through every layer of my being, stripping away all pretense, all masks, all excuses. He saw my sins, my failures, my regrets, things I had tried to forget, things I had tried to bury so deep even I no longer dared to confront them. And yet, in his gaze, there was no condemnation, no anger. There was only love, a love so vast, so consuming, that it made me crumble. I fell to my knees, sobbing, unable to bear the weight of it. Not because it was painful, but because it was too much, too overwhelming, too pure. I had never known love like this, love that saw everything and still chose to embrace me. I could barely breathe, let alone speak. I wanted to tell him how sorry I was, to beg for forgiveness, to explain, to justify. But what words could possibly suffice? What could I say to the one who knew me better than I knew myself? My voice trembled as I tried to form words, but they died on my lips. My entire being shook, not from fear, but from the sheer realization of who was standing before me. And then he spoke. His voice was not merely sound, it was a force. It resonated through the very fabric of existence, filling the air, vibrating through my soul, carrying a weight beyond anything I could comprehend. It wasn't just heard, it was felt. It was like the sound of eternity itself, the voice that had spoken creation into existence. Daniel. That single word sent shivers through me. It wasn't just my name. It was me, everything I was, everything I had ever been, spoken with a love so infinite that it nearly broke me. In that one moment, I realized I had never truly been alone. Even in the darkest times, even when I had doubted, even when I had cursed him, he had always been there, watching, waiting, loving me, even when I had refused to love him. My tears flowed harder as my chest tightened with emotions I couldn't even name. I had spent my whole life searching for something, trying to fill a void I didn't understand, and now I was standing before the answer. Then he said something I never expected. "You cannot stay here. I am sending you back." His words struck me like lightning, and my sobs caught in my throat. "Go back? My mind reeled with confusion and desperation. Why? Why would he show me this only to send me away? I had never felt such peace, such belonging. Why would he take it away? My voice cracked as I finally found the courage to speak. What message? Why must I go back? I pleaded, my hands gripping the hem of his robe as if holding on would change his mind. I wasn't ready to leave. I didn't want to go back to a world of pain and suffering. And then the visions began. I saw the earth before me, suspended in the vastness of the cosmos. It was beautiful, full of life, but as I watched, something began to change. Cracks appeared across its surface, spreading like a web of fractures. I saw great disasters, earthquakes that shattered entire cities, storms that swallowed the land, fire raining from the sky. The world was breaking, unraveling before my eyes. I saw people, lost, disconnected, wandering in confusion. They were alive, but their eyes were empty, their souls severed from something vital. And then, in the midst of it all, I saw him, Barron Trump. At first, I didn't understand why he was there, why he was at the center of this vision. But something told me he was not just an observer. He was a key figure, a crucial piece in something far greater than I could comprehend. I watched as his choices sent ripples through history, altering the course of nations, shaping the destiny of millions. And then Jesus spoke again. His decisions will not only determine the fate of America, but of the entire world. The weight of those words hit me like a tidal wave. I had thought my experience was about me, about my own salvation, but now I realized it was much bigger than that. There was something coming, something that would change everything. And Barron Trump was at the heart of it. My mind spun with questions, but before I could ask them, the vision faded, and I was once again kneeling before Jesus. His eyes were steady, unwavering. "Go back, Daniel, deliver this message." And then everything went black. The moment Jesus spoke, my mind was overtaken by a flood of images, not mere flashes of thought, but a vivid, living reality that engulfed me completely. It was as if I had been transported into a new dimension, one where the boundaries of time and space no longer existed. I saw Earth suspended in the vastness of the cosmos, spinning silently in the darkness. But something was wrong. It was no longer the world I once knew. Deep, jagged cracks spread across its surface, like wounds bleeding through the very fabric of humanity. Towering cities that once gleamed under the sunlight were now engulfed in thick, suffocating clouds of black smoke. The oceans, once serene and full of life, had turned into merciless monsters. In other places, the land had become a barren wasteland, cracked and desolate, where the sun burned relentlessly, leaving behind nothing but death and dust. Civilizations crumbled, not from war, but from a far greater, more insidious force, the decay of the human spirit. I wanted to look away, to unsee the horrors unfolding before me, but I couldn't. I was being made to witness this. I saw people, millions of them, wandering through the ruins, their faces hollow, their eyes devoid of life. There was no kindness, no compassion left in them. They fought, not for power or greed, but simply to exist. Humanity had become fractured, divided by forces beyond their understanding. Governments had collapsed, and in their place something else had risen, a system not ruled by people, but by technology. And then, amidst this chaos, I saw him, Barron Trump. But he was no longer a child. He stood tall, powerful, yet strangely detached, as if carrying the weight of something far greater than himself. He was inside an enormous chamber, standing before a vast array of digital screens, each displaying decisions of monumental consequence. Though I couldn't hear any sound, I knew with chilling certainty that what he decided here would not just shape America, but determine the fate of the entire world. His expression was unreadable, but I could feel it, a struggle deep within him, an uncertainty that lingered just beneath the surface. He was standing at a crossroads, and the choice he was about to make would lead the world down one of two vastly different paths. In one future, I saw technology being used for the good of mankind. Cities flourished with clean energy, no longer drowning in pollution. Disease had been eradicated, and people lived longer, healthier lives, free from the suffering that had plagued previous generations. AI had not replaced humanity, but had become its greatest ally, helping to elevate civilization to new heights. I saw people placing their faith in God, not in machines, using the power of innovation to unite rather than divide. There was peace, prosperity, and progress. A golden age where mankind lived in harmony with both creation and the Creator. But then, everything changed. The brightness of that world was torn away, replaced by something cold, mechanical, and utterly lifeless. I now saw a different future, one where technology had become the ultimate ruler, not a tool for good, but a force of total control. People walked the streets, but their eyes were vacant, their movements stiff and unnatural, as if they were mere shadows of who they once were. Wires ran along their spines, their limbs twitching unnaturally, their minds no longer their own. They had become prisoners within a system that dictated every thought, every action, every moment of their existence. There was no rebellion, no questioning, no free will. In this world, the buildings were sleek, futuristic, but they held no warmth. There were no families, no true relationships, no faith, only cold efficiency. Screens flickered across every surface, broadcasting messages that commanded absolute obedience. AI no longer served humanity. It had become its master. It decided who lived, who was no longer needed, and who would simply disappear. And at the center of this frightening new world, there he was again, Barron Trump. But something was different. This time I could see it. The burden pressing down on him, the weight of what had been set in motion. He had not created this dystopia, but his choices had allowed it to happen. He was not a tyrant, not a villain, but a leader who had walked a road paved with good intentions, one that had unknowingly led the world into its own enslavement. I felt my chest tighten with panic. I had to stop this. I had to warn him. I tried to speak, to call out to him, but my voice was stolen by the overwhelming silence of this soulless world. And then I felt a presence beside me. I turned, and there stood Jesus. His gaze was steady, filled not with fear, but with profound sadness. He did not condemn what I had seen, nor did he try to explain it away. He simply looked at me and said, "The future is not yet written, but you must warn them." The words struck deep into my soul, sending chills through my very being. Warn them? How? Who would believe me? I was just a 15-year-old boy. How could I possibly convince the world of what I had seen? How could I change the course of history when no one would even listen? The weight of responsibility crashed over me, crushing me under its impossible burden. What could I do? Jesus spoke again, his voice calm yet firm. You do not need to change the whole world. His words seemed to stretch into eternity, yet I struggled to hold on to them, as if something was pulling me away. Suddenly, the vision shattered around me. Everything dissolved into darkness. I was falling, not just through space, but through existence itself. The warmth of Jesus' presence vanished, replaced by a void so deep it seemed to stretch into eternity. My mind reeled, struggling to hold on to what I had seen, what I had been told, but it was slipping away like sand through my fingers. The images of Barron Trump, of the world on the brink of transformation or destruction, flickered and faded, leaving only an overwhelming sense of urgency pressing against my chest. I had to remember. I had to warn them. But the force pulling me away was too strong. The light, the visions, even the voice of Jesus, all of it disappeared, swallowed by an abyss that seemed to have no end. And then, sound. It started as a distant echo, faint and almost unreal, a rhythmic beeping, steady and mechanical, voices blurred and frantic, cutting through the void. The sensation of weight returned, pressing against my chest, my limbs. I gasped, my lungs burning as if I had been underwater for far too long. My body convulsed, air rushed in, and then pain. A searing, unbearable pain shot through me, a reminder that I was no longer floating in the realm of eternity. I was back. My ears caught a final, desperate exclamation. "We have a heartbeat!" The blinding white light overwhelmed my vision, forcing me to squint. The warmth of Jesus was gone. The vast expanse where I had drifted between light and darkness had vanished. I was no longer floating. I was back. The steady beeping of medical machines echoed in my ears, mixed with the stunned voices of those around me. My breaths were shallow, my chest rising and falling as if I had just surfaced from the depths of an endless ocean. I felt hands pressing against my body, checking my pulse, urgency filling the air. A voice broke through the confusion, filled with disbelief. "This is impossible. This boy has been dead for over 7 minutes." I blinked, struggling to adjust to my surroundings, but the memories remained vivid. I remembered everything. I remembered the gaze of Jesus as he looked at me, the final words he spoke, the terrifying visions of 2 drastically different futures. I remembered the face of Barron Trump, standing between 2 paths, one leading to light, the other to darkness. A single decision could change everything, but now I was here, back in the world I had once belonged to. A choked sob pulled me from my thoughts. I turned my head slightly and saw my mother, her face drenched in tears, her hands trembling as she gripped mine tightly, as if afraid that if she let go, I would disappear again. Behind her stood my father, his face pale, his eyes wide with shock and worry. They looked at me as if I were a miracle, something that should not have happened yet was unfolding right in front of them. I wanted to speak, but my throat was dry, my lips barely able to move. My body felt unbearably heavy, as if I had been dragged back from a place where time and gravity did not exist. They said I had died. 7 minutes without a heartbeat. 7 minutes in this world. But I knew I had been somewhere else for far longer. After a few moments of struggling to find my voice, I swallowed hard and finally spoke. But the words that left my lips were not what I had expected to say upon returning to life. My voice was hoarse but firm. "We need to pray for Barron Trump." The room fell silent. My mother furrowed her brows, completely confused. She held my hand even tighter, as if trying to ground me back into reality. "What?" she whispered, her voice still trembling. I turned to look at her, my eyes more serious than ever. I gripped her hand, feeling the warmth of her touch, yet my mind was still trapped in the world I had just left behind. I didn't know how to explain it in a way she would understand, in a way anyone in the room would understand. "Everything is changing." My voice was steady, unwavering. "We don't have much time." I looked around, seeing the doctors and nurses still frozen in shock over what had just happened. I saw my father, his face still struggling to mask the disbelief. I knew they all thought my words were the result of my near-death experience, that I was speaking nonsense because my mind hadn't fully recovered, but they didn't understand. They didn't know what I had seen. I had to tell them. I had to share the truth. I had to warn them about the future, about what could happen, about the visions that had been as clear as day. I had to let them know that we still had a chance to change things, but time was running out. But how could I tell them about Jesus? How could I describe the horrifying images of a world controlled by technology, of soulless people walking the streets, of the power Barron Trump held in shaping the future? Would they believe me? Or would they think I was just a boy hallucinating after a near-death experience? I didn't know, but one thing was certain. I could not keep this story to myself. I looked at my mother again, searching for a way to make her understand, but she simply shook her head, unable to process what I was saying. And that's when I realized I couldn't just speak. I had to show them. I had to live by the truth I had been shown, to spread the message that Jesus had entrusted to me. The world I had seen could still be saved, but only if we act before it's too late. I don't know if you will believe me. I don't know if this story will reach those who truly need to hear it. But I do know one thing. The world is standing at a crossroads. Barron Trump could be the one to lead us into an extraordinary future, or he could unknowingly open a door to an irreversible darkness. But the future is not yet set. There is still time. There is still hope. We must pray. We must act, because what I have seen was not a dream. It was a warning, and it is approaching faster than any of us can imagine. This was Daniel's story. How do you feel after hearing it? Do you believe in the testimony of this 15-year-old boy? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to Eternal Bible Stories to hear more powerful testimonies like this one. Remember, God is always with you. May He bless you abundantly. Amen.